We want to welcome you to the Florida Climate Ambassador Training. We are going to keep letting a few more people in this morning, and we are really glad to be with you. Thank you for taking the time today. We're going to have some time for interaction, and we're going to learn about how important our voices are in moving our communities toward climate solutions and climate action. And happy Climate Week. We're going to just wait another minute or two. I think we've gotten the waiting room cleared out. All right. So if you are here for the Florida Climate Ambassador Training, you are in the right place. I want to welcome you. I'm Jennifer Roberts. I'm the Director of Path to Positive Communities for Eco America. And my co-presenter today is Dr. Anna Pushkin-Shevlin, who is the Regional Director for Growing Climate Solutions, which is based in Southwest Florida. You've probably all been on Zoom for the past year, but we are going to have a short break. We are going to record and save the recording so you can reference it again later. When we have breakout or discussion, if you can turn your video on, you're welcome to leave it off for now, because I know that sometimes the Wi-Fi can be tricky and leaving a video off helps that. We will be using the chat function for questions. We also are going to have you raise your hand for one part of the training. So I hope that everyone is familiar with the raise hand function on Zoom. And we are going to proceed with our agenda today. So first, we're going to talk about what it means to be a climate ambassador, to be someone who speaks and advocates about climate solutions. We'll give an overview of impacts that are happening in Florida, an overview of solutions that are available to you personally and also to your community. We're going to go through effective climate communication, specifically focusing on how to harness the power of social media to make your points. And then we'll talk about engagement and advocacy and the next things that you can do as a climate ambassador in helping move all of Florida and all of our communities forward on climate solutions. So first, we want you to think about what you love about Florida. You know, what maybe brought you to Florida, or if you grew up there, some of the things that you care about. And a lot of that has to do with the outdoors, amazing beaches, beautiful golf courses, time with family, the wonderful waterways. All of those things are what we want to preserve in the face of a changing climate. And these are all values that are universal, bipartisan, family, time together in the community, time in the outdoors. And that quality of life is very important to people in Florida. In fact, people everywhere care about their quality of life. And that's what we're going to help you engage policymakers and other community members on ways to preserve that quality of life. So we're going to help you make the connection between climate change and the impacts that you can see already happening around you in Florida. We're going to give you some skills and knowledge to be able to talk about climate solutions and to be a little more adept at digital advocacy for climate solutions. And then we're going to empower you as a concerned resident and a climate ambassador to help improve the health and prosperity of your community and to engage friends and neighbors in climate action, because there are so many things that are accessible and available to you. So now we're just going to have a little exercise in raising your hands with a hand raise function that you have. how many of you know that climate change is happening right now in Florida? If you can use the raise hand function on your Zoom. And because I'm sharing my screen, Anna's going to have to tell me how many hands are raised.
I'm not sure I can actually see that. Where would that be?
You pull down your participants and they should have hand raised. Here, I'll see if I can.
Sorry. Okay.
Hey, you've
We
got
have
Bridget raise
one,
your hand. All right. So does everybody else know how to use the raise hand?
two,
Oh, there we go. We've got a couple. Raise
two,
your hand if you think you can see.
three.
Perfect. Okay. Now, raise your hand if you're concerned about climate change. Let's see if everybody's figuring out how to raise their hand on their Zoom. Oh, we've got a thumbs up on somebody. That's a good one.
Okay, we have three more.
We got three. Yes, people
Four.
are concerned. Very good. Oh, we got someone who's got a thumbs up and a hand raised. Very good. Very adept. And we're going to go to the last question. How many of you think that you personally can help Florida bring about climate solutions and make the future better? How many of you believe that you have the agency to do that? Okay, some people are not so sure. And that's absolutely true of a lot of folks in the United States and in Florida. We're going to help you understand how you can help bring climate solutions to Florida and to your communities. So thanks for the hand raising and the thumbs up. So I want to quickly let you know that we have done surveys of people in Florida and specifically in Southwest Florida. You'll see a lot of different headlines. You know that the coastlines are very vulnerable. You know about repeated hurricanes. Our survey data shows us that climate change is indeed a concern, and there's actually a lot of agreement around things like protecting our natural environment, which is so important to enjoying Florida. 93%, that's pretty much everybody, thinks the government should help protect mangroves and wetlands and other natural areas of Florida. 83% think that extreme weather is threatening and that sea level rise is threatening the well-being of their communities. So you can see that there is a lot of agreement, and people are ready for some solutions. So I'm going to now turn it over to Anna. And Anna, I'm going to let you share your screen. Now we can see everybody's faces for a minute. I'm going to let Anna share her screen and give a quick overview of some of the things that are going on that you probably have noticed.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you assure me that you are looking at the PowerPoint presentation without notes? Okay,
Yep.
So thank you for joining us this morning, because I know it's a big commitment during Climate Week to spend this time with us. So we want to make it worthwhile. And I see from the audience, we have some diverse people with diverse backgrounds. And when I start to talk to an audience about climate change, the first thing I realize, especially in Florida, where we have a lot of seniors, is that not everybody has the same science background to really understand this issue. So sometimes they come at the discussion from the middle. And when I need to get everyone on the same page, I start at the very beginning. And I find this graphic very helpful in explaining just the essence of what warming is about. Why do we talk about global warming and the greenhouse effect? So for people who've been out of science, high school science for a long, long time, it's a refresher. So we start by telling people that, the sun gives off electromagnetic radiation, and that radiation comes through space, penetrates the atmosphere, and comes through and hits the atmosphere, and some of it bounces off the atmosphere in the clouds and gets reflected back into the universe. Other rays penetrate the atmosphere, they hit the earth, and they bounce off of a reflective surface, something white like ice or snow or a white roof. And those rays also bounce back through the atmosphere and escape. But a large majority of those rays come through the atmosphere and they hit a dark color. And when you wear a black or brown shirt in the summer, it's warmer, right? So that gets absorbed in the Earth's, in the material of the earth, and then it gets re-emitted as infrared radiation, which is a longer wavelength. And some of that may escape the environment, the atmosphere, but a lot of it gets trapped in the atmosphere and reflected down back onto the earth. And that's what keeps our climate or our temperatures warm and temperate, allowing life to live on the earth. Without an atmosphere like the moon, it would be freezing cold and nothing could live here. But what we have to think of is that the earth is like a blanket, like a down blanket. It has to regulate just right to keep the temperatures in a range that's comfortable. If we change the composition of this atmosphere, it will become like a warmer blanket, like adding another blanket, and it will start to get uncomfortably warm. And that is the greenhouse effect. So when people start asking you, what is global warming? Having this picture, which is by NOAA, available is a useful tool. And then we have to start to tell people the issue has become that over the past 200-300 years, we have started to change the composition of the gases in that atmosphere. We're making the blanket warmer. And that's because we've emitted gases like carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. And this little graph underneath helps you see what has changed. It's over a period of 2,000 years. And you can see that it goes up and down a little bit from natural variation, but that natural variation is very small compared to this spike that you see in the past 100 or 200 years with the advent of industrialization. So this spike is nowhere the variation that we have seen in the past. And people will then say, but the climate has changed over time in history of the earth all the time. And that is true. This graphic shows you that over, let's say, 1 million years, the composition of CO2, which is on the left axis, has gone up and down. And it's gone up and down quite a bit, but it has never really exceeded 300 parts per million, and certainly not since humans have walked the earth. And then here in time 0, we see the level reach 400 parts per million. And now it's at about 411 parts per million. And by mid-century, it's going to reach 540 parts per million. And this has never happened while Homo sapiens and other humanoids have ever walked the earth. And so the changes that we're going to see have never really happened before. So this is one of those, is it natural? Is variation natural? Yes, variation is natural, but not this level of variation. And what has caused that is easy to explain. During the Industrial Revolution, we've gone from an agrarian society that looked like this to one that looks like this and moves tons of food in trucks, in refrigerated trucks to supermarkets. We've gone from the beginning of industrialization that were by the rivers, water-powered mills, to manufacturing that's all electric, coal-fired, or other fossil fuel energies. We've gone from transportation of horses and buggies and carriages and walking to infrastructure with automobiles that are largely run by fossil fuels at the moment. So those changes have really driven the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions. And when we start to look at how to solve the problem, it's kind of important to understand, well, where is it all coming from? And this graphic shows you in Florida that the emissions profile of our state is largely transportation driven. 45% of the emissions in the state of Florida come from transportation, compared to 29% in the US. Likewise, because we rely on electricity for most of our air conditioning here, and we run more air conditioning than heat, 43% of our emissions come from the way we produce electricity, compared to 28% in the US, because in northern latitudes, they use more oil and natural gas, let's say, to heat their homes. We also have to look at industry. In the rest of the United States, that accounts for 22%, but Florida doesn't have that much heavy industry. Here, it's only 5%. And then ag is an important piece. We have a big ag sector. So when we start to look at solutions to bring forth in Florida, one way to start focusing our attention is on this transportation and electricity piece. It's where we stand to make the biggest impact. So what are those impacts? Why are we so concerned about climate change? So there are many impacts that we can focus on. Let's start at the very beginning where we first started feeling it. When I showed you that picture of the electromagnetic radiation coming through outer space and hitting our planet, 90% of those rays hit the ocean because we're largely covered by water. So 90% of the heat and about 30% of the emissions that we've emitted over the past 200 years have been absorbed in our oceans. And what happens when you get warmer and more CO2 in the oceans is they become more acidic. The pH changes and the things in the ocean are impacted heavily. So we have issues of coral bleaching, which were first discovered, well, back in the 80s, and then worse and worse over time. It weakens the creatures that rely on calcium carbonate for their shells, like mussels and clams and crabs. That acidity does not allow them to properly fix the calcium carbonate and make hard shells. So that impacts our fisheries and the bottom of the food chain. So over time, it really impacts the biodiversity, tourism, and fishing industry. And in Florida, we've seen that these weaker, these impacts that weaken the health of our underwater ecosystem have resulted in stony coral tissue disease. And that was first picked up in the 90s, and it was only affecting parts of the Miami area. In 2019, that disease in the corals has spread from just about Key West all the way up to West Palm Beach. So this is not just something on the Great Barrier Reef, it's happening right here in Florida. And those are our tourism dollars. And that is our ecosystem. We also talk a lot about sea level rise. And again, you have to anchor this discussion in science. So if you go back to your physics class, you once had two Bunsen burners and you put some water in two beakers and you turned on the burner. And as the water got warm and the temperature got warm, the volume of water expanded because it changes state, right? So the same thing that's driving thermal expansion in the beaker is part of what's driving sea level rise. So there is a debate whether the rising waters in the oceans are mostly melting polar caps or thermal expansion. And it's gone back and forth. Right now, it's a lot of polar cap melt. So we have been losing about 10% of decadal ice every 10 years. And over time, that has added water to the system. Not only have you added water to the system, the water has gotten warmer and it's expanded. So two things, more water and water expansion. But when you melt this ice at the polar caps on the top of the Alps and the top of the Rockies, we also change the reflection. That's why that first graphic is so important. So we have less white reflective surfaces on Earth to reflect back some of that solar radiation, and more of it gets absorbed. And this is where the issue of the melting permafrost comes in. So areas that were covered in ice have permafrost underneath. As the ice melts, the permafrost melts, and the permafrost has a lot of trapped methane and other organic creatures. So as that melts, it's contributing more methane and other CO2 gases. You have essentially a cycle that's self-generating, and that is driving change faster and faster. So sea level rise isn't something that's just happening in the future. It's already happened. Since 1950, the state of Florida has experienced about 8 inches of sea level rise. And people say, well, that's not a lot, 8 inches in 50 years. But that's the fallacy that the relationship is linear, like in algebra, where y equals mx over b. That's not the way it is. This is a calculus equation, not an algebra equation. The curve, the line of the sea level rise is accelerating. So where it was increasing slowly, right now, over the past decade, it's been increasing about 1 inch every 3 years. And that's predicted to increase even faster. So one of the first states, the first projections that was done for the state of Florida specifically was in the southeast part of the state, where there is a Southeast Florida Climate Compact. They got together NOAA, NASA, and some of the best universities in the region to analyze what's going on locally here in Florida. And they determined that since the year 2000, we have already experienced 8 inches. And by 2040, that means in 40 years, we will have increased the amount of sea level rise somewhere between 17 inches and 21 inches. So almost 2 feet in 40 years. By 2070, that number could be over a yard, like 40 inches. And if you look at the higher level projection, it could be closer to 5 feet. And by the end of the century, we could have 136 inches of sea level rise. And it's important to realize that there are different projections because we use them in different ways. If you're looking at a coastal, dock that's supposed to last 40 years, okay, you plan for a sea level rise of about 40 inches. If you're building a nuclear power plant or a bridge that's going to last 150 years, you better start looking at these higher level projections to be on the safe side. On the other side of the state, we have also projections. We base these on the sea level gauges that NOAA tracks. So this isn't a model that's invented. It's coming off of real data that's been collected off of buoys offshore. And what we anticipate is that by 2030 on the west side of the state, we can experience 9 to 15 inches of sea level rise over this 2000 figure. And by 2040, almost about 2 feet. A little less than the East Coast, but not enough to be significant. It's significant all around. And what does this mean? It means that we have a lot of property value at risk. In fact, by 2050, many parts of our state will experience flooding on average 26 times a year, even in the absence of a hurricane or a storm. There are about 100 zip codes in Florida where 40% of the property tax base is in areas that will experience this type of flooding. So I'm based in Southwest Florida, and we've looked specifically at Naples, Sanibel, and Fort Myers Beach, and they are ranked 10th, 26th, and 32nd in the entire country in terms of the property value at risk, according to Zillow. So that sounds pretty frightening, but the good news is that if we were to be able to adjust to the Paris Climate Agreement targets, about 93% of the properties at risk could avoid this kind of chronic flooding in the next 100 years. We just have to reduce emissions and keep those curves from becoming so exponential. Another thing that Floridians are pretty sensitive about, and a great entree to discuss climate with those that aren't 100% engaged, is the hurricanes of the future. Every June 1st, we prepare for hurricane season. And when you start talking to people, telling them that the hurricanes of the future are going to be perhaps worse, scarier, and more destructive, sort of perks up everybody's ears. Why? Because as the temperatures get warmer, both in the air and in the ocean, warmer air holds more moisture. It evaporates more water from the surrounding area. So the hurricanes are going to be wetter, and that results in more flooding. Also, as hurricanes get warmer, they increase in power. So where we used to have plenty of hurricanes, lots of category 2s and 3s, in the next 30 or 40 years, we may anticipate more category 3 and 4 hurricanes, about 25% to 30% greater chance that we're going to have a category 4 and 5 storm than in the past. That's a lot. And in terms of wetter, for every degree that it gets warmer, those hurricanes hold 7% more moisture, a lot more flooding. And together, stronger storms and higher sea levels will push that storm surge further inland, which is particularly worrisome if you're in Tampa Bay, which is a very low and flat big bay, or if you're in Naples, where the shoreline is pretty flat for a long time, a lot of water can pile up. Less so on the East Coast, but we also see together the warming and the moisture. These storms are accelerating faster. We used to see the storms come in, for 4 or 5 days, category 2, increased to 3, then it increased to 4, then it would go back to 3, then it would go back to 4. Nowadays, we're seeing storms that go from a category 2 to a category 4 in 24 hours, providing less time to prepare and more destructive impact. Even without the storms, we see erratic precipitation patterns. Right now, we're in a dry spell, but when it rains, it's going to rain a lot. It's going to be heavy rains. We've already started to see this. In 2018, Collier County experienced between 10 and 17 inches of rain in 24 hours. And so we're going to get wetter wets and drier dries. And a lot of people don't worry about flooding. If they haven't experienced it, it seems like something that happens to other people. But this is going to start happening to more people. And let me explain for a moment why. I think that it's really important for Floridians and others even thinking of coming down here to understand that Florida was basically not inhabitable until the Army Corps of Engineers dredged canals and basically drained the swamps. And that's what allowed this enormous 100-year real estate boom to go on. And so let's go back to the beginning. We are still, regardless of the canals that were dredged, sitting in a state that is largely built on a big sponge. It's limestone. Limestone looks like this. It has lots of little holes in it. And you can see it here in the shoreline. When it rains, the water percolates into this, limestone base, and it fills up those little holes. But once it fills that up, the water has no soil to drain into, and it starts to puddle on top. So that's one reason we get flooding. Then we have the canals and the stormwater system that was built on them. And you can see that the outpours come into the canals. But when the canals get too full and this outfall is covered by water, the water doesn't continue draining. It backs up the pipe and it comes out the other end, like in a parking lot. And this poor guy's car gets flooded. And we don't, so a car gets flooded. But you don't know if this gentleman has the money to repair that car. That's a $700 repair. It may put him out of work. It may not allow him to take his elderly parents to the doctor. These impacts are pretty real. And over time, the canal system that was built that allowed all of this growth and all of this economic development in the state, it will also run out of capacity because the canal system was largely built with gravity. You drain the water toward the two sides, toward the Gulf and toward the ocean. And you have these water control features. The feature is down and it traps the water on the landward side and it all drains in there. When the tide is low on the ocean side, the tailward side, they open this coastal construction structure and all the water, the fresh water, drains out to the other side. However, if the sea levels rise and suddenly you don't get this tailwater, you can't lift this coastal construction feature. The water will flow the wrong way. So then you have to hold the water in the canal until such time that you have lower water on the other side. And if you get a lot of rain, those canals will flood like you see in this bottom picture. And it will cause property damage and erosion to properties along those canals. What people also don't connect to is that flooding is directly related to the water quality issues. So when it rains after a long time, fertilizer that's accumulated in the lawns gets flushed out into the water system, either a stormwater system or the canals. And when the waters get lower and warmer, it promotes algal blooms, these harmful algal blooms that work their way out through the canal system into the estuaries and really wreak havoc on both the natural systems and our tourism, boating, and fishing economy. And even without that, we have a lot of development in the state of Florida that's still on septic, very old septic. And like I showed you, there's not a lot of soil here to absorb that water. So when you get a strong rain event, you can overwhelm the septic system and essentially the poop rises and it creates, pretty icky lawn situations with lots of bacteria and E. coli that can then become a health hazard. And even if you're in an urbanized area and you flood out a couple of garages and these homes, think about what's kept in the garage. Fertilizer, oil for your car, detergents, all kinds of things end up floating in that flood water. And so it's not a really healthy outcome. So it's important to connect that this flooding issue, which people think of as maybe not affecting them, it really does in indirect ways impact them. On the other hand, we have the drought situation, which we've experienced right now. We're about 3 feet lower than the mean water level is usually in the state of Florida during the end of the dry season. And when that happens, we create a situation where we're drying out our brush for brush fires in the summer, and wading birds that migrate through don't have the water resources for the fish that they eat, and it changes migration patterns. So we have to consider this an issue of species migration, wildfires, damage to crops, and even the potential of water shortages. And the water shortage issue also exists underground. And this is a topic that many people don't know about, and they don't understand it because they don't see it. So saltwater intrusion is something you should, as a climate ambassador, at least have tucked in the back of your pocket. All the development that's happened in Florida here on the land has relied on a freshwater aquifer, the water that comes out of your sink to wash your dishes, right? And as we develop, we tend to draw more and more of this aquifer because more people are living here. But as we have sea level rise, the saltwater line starts migrating inland this way. And soon enough, the interface between saltwater and freshwater will touch these wells, and you will start to draw salt water up through the well. And that compromises our water supply, which means we have to dig new wells further inland, very expensive, and we have a dwindling and finite supply, especially if we pave over paradise and we don't allow that fresh water to percolate down and refill that aquifer for additional development. So we have to, depending on your audience, when you're talking to people, this is a more sophisticated concept to explain to people, but something that you should know about to be able to be fully versed in some of these issues. Finally, we want to talk about heat, because different parts of the state will be impacted differently, but particularly in Southwest Florida, we stand to become significantly hotter. The number of days in Southwest Florida that will reach a heat index, that's heat plus humidity, over 105 will increase from, let's say, 26 in the year 2000 to 157 by 2050. And if you look on the chart on the right, this is a national chart. Fort Myers, Naples, Punta Gorda rank 5th, 6th, and 8th. Miami, not far behind us, 9th. Interior part of the state, Lakeland, 12th. Tampa, 13th. In the number of days that it's going to be unbearably warm here. And that has a lot of impact both on our economy and our public health. In terms of economy, we still rely on people coming here to vacation or snowbirds coming down for the winter season. So if it's more temperate in the north and it's unbearably hot here earlier, that seasonality may get shorter. Less money spent in the economy on restaurants and gift shops and other things that employ young people and older people. But where we make a more powerful argument is on the health issue. Hotter temperatures result in dehydration and stroke, more incidences of cardiovascular disease, stroke, and heart attacks. Also, as the climate changes and it gets warmer, different bugs and birds will move into our natural environments, bringing with them other diseases like dengue and Zika. But even before that, heat also impacts the air quality, especially at the ground level with ozone. You will see more asthma attacks, more COPD. Also, as it gets warmer, trees will blossom earlier. Their pollen will be more vicious on people with asthma. And so you will have a higher incidence of asthma attacks. And this is disproportionately impacts vulnerable communities. And what I mean by that are older people and young children and communities of color that are disproportionately impacted by asthma right now. It will also impact outdoor workers, the people fixing the roads, the gardeners mowing your lawn, the pool service that comes to clean that swimming pool. It will impact people with pre-existing conditions, particularly grandparents and elderly. So when we talk about heat, There's an economic argument and a health argument that needs to be made. And part of the economic argument is that as it gets warmer, we're going to need more energy to cool ourselves, more air conditioning. That's going to take more money out of your wallet to spend on other things. If the infrastructure isn't built out properly, we may have outages. When everybody turns on the air conditioning at 71 degrees to cool off a house, we may have a brownout. Over time, that heating and cooling impacts the roads. They crack more. More public dollars have to be spent to maintain the quality of the infrastructure. Even the air travel industry will be inconvenienced because as it gets warmer, planes need more fuel to travel the same distance. So these long hauls that we have between, let's say, Miami and the West Coast may have to make a stop in Denver over time to refuel because they just won't run as efficiently. So the impacts cascade down through our infrastructure. And let's not forget our agricultural economy. So as we have fluctuating temperatures, the citrus industry, which has already been impacted by canker, really suffers to come back. And we've replaced some of that fresh produce with blueberries in the past 20, 30 years. But what people don't realize is that blueberries need 150 hours of temperatures below 40 degrees to actually bloom and make blueberries. If the winters don't get that cold, even the new crops that we've planted may be impacted. So overall, climate will impact our ag industry. It will increase the price of food, which impacts the poor. It'll increase hunger because people will be more food insecure, and it will change the nature of our employment. So we'll have to adjust to that. So with all of this, I think, you have a lot to digest, and we're going to take a few minutes of a break because we're rounding out on, a little bit of fatigue here. If Jennifer, if you want to take over and call the break.
Sure. And if you want to stop sharing your screen, Anna, so we can see everybody's faces. There we go. We had a few more people join us. I want to let the folks who joined us recently know that we are recording this, so you will be able to watch what you missed later. We'll send you the recording and you can watch the whole thing again, or just the part that you weren't able to see. But we wanted to give a break just for a minute so we can introduce ourselves to each other. We know that we are forming a community of people who care about our environment, about our climate, and who want to work together in collective action. So if we could just, if you have video capability, if you could turn your video on so we can say hello. And we do have one admin person that says Pat the Positive. He's not going to turn his video on, but he's helping us run the show today. But if you could turn your video on, and I'll go around my screen, and if you can introduce yourself with your name. If you represent an organization, great. If you don't represent an organization, tell us your city that you're in, and then maybe one thing that you'd like to learn from the training today. So we'll start with Sandra Vermillion.
Okay, my name's Sandra. I'm in North Miami, Miami-Dade County, Florida. I'm not with an organization. I have a journalism background, and I'm just trying to use social media more and to give more, confidence when I'm giving presentations.
Welcome, Sandra. Thank you. Well, glad to have you with us. Next, I'm going to go to Christina Salzberg. Christina, can you introduce yourself to the group?
She's on mute.
You're still on mute. Can you unmute yourself? Well, maybe she's taking a water break. Okay. Let's try Amy Ford. Amy, can you unmute yourself and say hello? Tell us your organization and where you are.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Hi, my name is Amy Ford, and I work with the Spinnaker Group. We are green building consultants. My interest in this group is I have volunteered in the past for Palm Bay Sustainability Advisory Board. I'm very interested in volunteering and moving this forward and working with local government. So this is a very important chat for me.
Fabulous. Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much. Next, we'll move to Marcos Pena.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marcos Pena. I'm the CEO and board chair for Green Planet Waterways Restorations Incorporated. We're a nonprofit. We're a group of environmental scientists. We have, I think, a rock star on our board. We have people in education. Our mission actually is to clean up the waterways. We've invented basically an aqua drone that's capable of running around 24/7 by itself, cleaning up waterways, not just the plastic that's in the waterways, but also the water itself, so that we can remove the pollutants, the contaminants, the oils, everything that man's put in there that doesn't belong there. In addition, we have underwater drones that are capable of replanting the native vegetation, the seagrasses, that kind of thing. It's a pretty extensive project. We saw a need for this several years ago. And we went to government and we noticed that government wasn't going to help. They weren't going to pay for it. They pretty much weren't interested at all. And we started locally and we worked through state and even federal. So we decided to set up a foundation to take care of it ourselves. And we advocate that people take this on themselves, that the government isn't going to help us clean the environment. They're not going to help us take care of things that need to be taken care of. Their main interest is protecting corporations. There's a lot of lobbies that we encountered in our process, anything from food processing to the oil lobby, the fossil fuel lobby. They're putting a lot of money out there to make sure that their industries stay protected and safe. We as environmentalists, we don't have a big lobby like that. We don't have money to basically give to the politicians. So what we need to do is we need to, as you guys know, come together as people. And we can do this on the internet. We can do this with social media, various ways. And we need to find ways to fix the environment ourselves, because if we wait for the government to do it, we're not going to have much of an environment left to save. We're already down about 90% in stock on our corals, 90%, down about 80% in our wildlife and our fish. And as we know, we had a big kill off of manatees this year. We don't really have a lot of time left. My best guess through my research is we have about 7 years to correct this problem before it really hits a tipping point where we're going to have a hard time correcting it. So we need to find a way to get everybody on board and get this process started. That's why we like organizations like yours. We think you guys are doing great, and this is a great conference. And that's it. My name is Marcos Pena. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Marcos. I think I read about your technology. I think you had some media on that. But this is absolutely what we want to do in this group, was we want to build that collective action and access to resources that we can all support, that can help us with our local issues, with or without government. Sometimes government can be a help, but it's also important for all of us to take individual action. So thank you for that. Next on my screen, I see Bridget Washburn.
Hi, good morning. It's good to see your face. I'm Bridget Washburn in Naples, Florida, and I'm communications associate with Growing Climate Solutions. So I am here, I'm relatively new to the organization, to hear the training and hopefully be able to pass on some more of this information to others not able to attend it today, and pick up on some more tips myself. It's good to see you.
Thanks, Bridget. Good to see you too. Next on my screen, I see Antonio Gomez, who just joined us. Antonio, we're just saying our name and our organization and one thing we want to learn today. If you can unmute, there you go.
Hola, hi, my name, sorry, I'm Venezuelan. My first language is Spanish. I try to involve in environment topics and that. Create content to Bolo Foundation. I friend to Thais Bogle. My mission here is help to my community. I have 23 years old. So I want to help the people, the young people, to say, hi, hey, we are the future, okay? So we need to do something good work hard for help the world, um, be more sustainable. That is my mission. I use my social media. Influencer in my social media. I work like an influencer in social media for Bolo Foundation.
Wow.
That is my mission usually.
Antonio, yo hablo español. Si necesitas que te traduzca algo o querés clarificación, llámame
Ah,
después y podemos pasar por los slides, ¿ok?
Oh, wow, buenísimo, Ana, gracias.
Ok,
Yo
de
también.
nada.
Yo también me imagino que hay muchas personas aquí que hablan español. Es muy bien. And
Bueno,
if we have,
estoy practicando mi inglés, así que
Ok.
and if we have questions on social media, we know who to ask. Podemos preguntar. Thank you. So next we're going to move to Elaine. Elaine Christian, you can unmute. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Elaine. I work for the City of West Palm Beach. I'm a sustainability program coordinator. I focus on education and outreach, and I also run our social media as well. So I figured this would be a good session for me to attend, and I'm sorry that I missed the first about 30 minutes. So I'm trying to play catch up here.
Elaine, do you work with Penny?
I do, and that's whose picture is. We share an account
Okay.
through our office, and so her picture shows up when I don't have my camera on. So, yeah,
That's great. Super. Next we have Sarah Wines.
Hi, my name is Sarah Wines, and I am from St. Pete, Florida. I am about to retire from a 30-year career working on development overseas with the U.S. Agency for International Development, and I've concentrated on climate change for a great part of my career. So I'm now looking at a variety of options to continue my work and interest. And so I thought I'd join the Volo Foundation. I have a number of colleagues who are connected to the Volo Foundation as well. In addition, I'll be working part-time with my agency to mentor future leaders in my agency on climate change issues as they rise up through the ranks. So this has been very interesting. Thank you.
Terrific. Welcome. And I'm going to give Christina one more chance if she's come back, Christina Salzberg, to unmute and say hello. Okay, maybe not. Did I miss anybody besides Christina? Okay. Super. Well, we have a great diverse group, and welcome everyone. Great input. We're going to continue with our presentation. And next we're going to have solutions to climate impacts, and then we're going to get into communications and the social media part. So I'm going to turn it back over to Anna to share her screen and continue with the presentation.
Okay. Let's see. So Jennifer, why don't you kick us off and then I'll take over.
Great. So what we always tell people when you're talking about climate change is you want to just talk about one or two impacts, because we focus on solutions, we focus on opportunity and positive things that we can all do. We know from our research that if you spend too much time on the negative impacts, it leads to depression, people have eco-anxiety, and it impedes their action. So we want to be positive and focus on solutions and the opportunity to change the trajectory that we've been on. Next slide. So we have a big change at the federal level, and we know that there's been a 180-degree reversal from the previous 4 years. On January 27th, only a few days after taking office, President Biden issued an executive order on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. And we know that in doing that, he named some important people like John Kerry as the international envoy for climate change. So we are reestablishing our leadership in the world and globally on taking climate action and climate solutions. And John Kerry has been tasked with representing us at those conferences overseas and continuing to work with our allies. So we know that for the world to change, every nation needs to be taking action. President Biden also named a domestic climate czar, as they call her, Gina McCarthy. She, by the way, will be speaking at our Eco America annual climate summit next week. She'll be talking about her charge domestically in terms of focusing spending, focusing legislation on climate solutions. And we know that there's a big infrastructure bill being discussed. We know that much of that infrastructure will be looking at climate resilience and also modernizing the grid and working on transportation, especially on transit and shared transportation, on ways that we can reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. The other thing that this executive order did was to, that's okay, was to talk about integrating climate action into every department at the federal level. That's also something that was new. One more thing that was added that was new was the idea of climate justice and a recognition on the federal level of the fact that we have concentrated pollution and greenhouse gas emissions and other climate impacts on our low income and Black and brown communities. And one of the focuses of the administration will be on changing that and making sure that we are bringing those underrepresented communities and their voices forward in climate solutions. Okay, next slide. And then, of course, there is action at the state level. We know that Florida has been in the news a lot. Just one thing that had recently made national news, made the AP, is, I'm sure you're all aware, of the Piney Point phosphate mine and the retention pond that started leaking. There was phosphogypsum, which is radioactive, that was stacked near that pond and was in danger of getting into the water supply. Unfortunately, the only solution was to drain the pond into the ocean. But these are the kinds of things that people can have advocacy around, making sure that these kinds of pollution, this kind of pollution is taken care of in a better manner going forward. Other things that have hit the news is the lack of a resiliency officer. Governor DeSantis made a lot of news by opening an office of resiliency when he was first elected, and he had somebody in place to help take charge of that. But that post has been vacant, and so has the science officer for the state. So again, that's an opportunity for you to use your voice, to use your social media, to advocate, to replace that position, to make sure that the state government is also focused on climate resilience and climate action. Of course, you can connect with your state representative for the state legislature. You can also connect with the governor's office, and we're going to talk more about that kind of advocacy in a minute. Next slide. Okay, now we also are going to talk about some local solutions, and I'm going to turn it back over to Anna.
So you may be wondering, so what is this Growing Climate Solutions Path to Positive group that you're spending your morning with, and Eco America? So Growing Climate Solutions is a regional initiative. We're based in Southwest Florida, taking in 5 counties here. And our goal is to build climate awareness and education, promote protecting natural assets, because we know from the statistics we mentioned earlier how strongly people feel about protecting the environment. And most importantly, it's about empowering the residents in our area and the businesses and the civic institutions to support and engage on these climate solutions, to make their voice and their preferences for these solutions heard, so that we can advance a healthy and prosperous, resilient community. Other parts in the state have moved a little earlier on building resilience. Southwest Florida, because of its demographics and its more conservative political leanings, has been not as forward on this. And it was time that we sort of organized the people here that care about this issue and teach them, like we are today, how to vocalize their position and their support for climate action. And we're funded by two of the regional community foundations, the Community Foundation of Collier County and the Southwest Florida Community Foundation in Fort Myers. We have partners with we're a partner of the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, which is a leading environmental and education group, and affiliated to the University, Florida Gulf Coast. And our partner is Eco America, who has helped us form the messaging and the strategy approach. And we've been doing this for about 18 months actively. And one thing we try to tell people is that while a lot of people think that, people don't believe in this, the overwhelming number of people, 2/3, believe that we can personally, and 78% believe that collectively they can reduce the pollution that causes climate change. We also believe that 70% of us think that they can personally, and the group as a community should take actions now. And there are actions that you can take personally. There are actions that you can take as a household, as a living unit. Together, these units make a community, and we can do things at the community level. And when we organize households and neighborhoods, we can actually change the policies at the government level. And there is a will and a need to do this, because according to some of the survey data, only 28% of Floridians currently agree that we're doing enough. 38% believe that government is not doing enough. And what's interesting is this gray area, this neutral number. 33% don't know if we're doing enough or not. And that means that there is education that's needed. People need to engage. So this is the opportunity number, right here. We have to convince these people that we have to do more. At the same time, you break this down in a different survey that is done by the Yale Climate Initiative, and they do look at it at a county level. And what's interesting to look at is that the state of Florida, at least 52% of the people believe that our governor, the state level, has to do more. In Southwest Florida, that number is lower. In some cases, in Lee County, under 50%. So yes, there is a desire to do things at the state level where there is state money. But what's interesting here is that in Southwest Florida and throughout the state, look at this number, 56%, they believe that local government needs to do more. So that is a real opportunity, because as individuals and as ambassadors, you are most connected with the people in your community, and the easiest people to reach is local government. They respond more directly to you because they live in your neighborhood. So this is a very good sign for the idea of advocating and getting involved in your network. And what we're trying to teach people is that you have hundreds of choices that help solve this problem, in the type of energy you choose, the way you use water, the type of transportation that you employ, the foods that you buy, purchase, use, and waste, and the things you spend money on. So to approach people on this, it depends on your audience. You can pick one or more of the solutions to focus on. Let's start with energy. We're in Florida. Air conditioning is a must, but how you set that air conditioner is important. A couple of degrees make a difference. And so does changing your filter and servicing that air conditioning unit, making sure it's humming at a maximum efficiency. Likewise, shades on your windows. Yes, they're a decorator item, but in Florida, they're more than a decorator item. Shading your windows and keeping that heat out makes your air conditioner work less. And this is simple. This is a conservation principle that you can even tell your grandparents. Close the windows, don't let the heat in. Also, that ceiling fan that every Florida house has, it's not there just to look like Bahama cool. It actually makes it cooler. If you run your ceiling fan, you can reduce the ambient temperature in your room by 3 to 4 degrees. And it's much more efficient. It reduces your energy cost by 30% compared to an air conditioning system. Many of us have adopted LED lights, but we've done it in some cases and not in those hi-hats that you can't reach, but those are the ones you use more often. So it's worth the time to get the ladder to change those LED lights on the spotlight, not just on the lamp. And when you move beyond those, as our inventory ages, we are starting to repair our homes. In fact, during COVID, 57% of Americans did a home improvement project. Well, how many of those were, decorative, and how many of those actually improved energy efficiency? Putting in good insulation, installing a cool roof, even doing an energy audit are all really positive solutions. Another way to approach this is water conservation. Let's say right now we're in this drought and people are talking about how the water levels are so low. So you can do something about this. You can install a zero-scape garden next time you change your plants out. It requires less water. Even natives survive better. If you do have flowering plants, don't run that sprinkler. Try a soaking hose. It keeps the water closer to the ground. It creates less evaporation. If you have a pool, none of us have these pool covers, but that's really important to prevent evaporation in the summer months. You don't want to turn on that hose for 2-3 hours to refill your pool. You're draining resources. Flush toilets are kind of common practice, but how many people run their dishwasher at full capacity? I argue with my husband constantly because we've gotten into reckless habits of running the dishwasher because you want to have clean dishes, even though it's not full. So just changing your expectations and making sure that you're running your dishwasher full, using an aerator. Maybe you're even ambitious and want to install a water capture system. Making sure when you advocate that you're watering your lawn with recycled water, not with potable water. These are all solutions that not just conserve water, they save you money. So there are small things that we can do to improve our energy efficiency and our water. Going back to that first slide that I showed you, transportation is a huge part of our equation in Florida. 45% of the emissions in our state come from the transportation sector. So every time you're making a choice, it's healthy to walk or bike when possible. You use less fuel if you don't idle your car just because you want the air conditioning on. How about opening the window and parking your car in the shade? Making sure that your tire pressure is maintained, getting into a carpool when possible. And then as you adopt these kind of changes, you can start talking to people about electric or hybrid. If you've even gone to explore an electric or hybrid car, tell your friends about it. Hey, it was really cool. It didn't look all weird. It drove like a regular car. These are important messages because it will inspire the next person who may be purchasing a car to, hey, well, my friend went and checked it out. I should also go check it out for myself. Another thing is reducing plane travel. That's a huge piece. And this is catching on because this is a picture of the latest Ford Mustang that is being put out. This isn't a weird electric car. This is a cool muscle car. It happens to be electric. We believe that as industry catches on and doesn't make being eco being strange, makes eco being normative, we're going to get a lot more traction. Likewise, planting trees. Everyone loves to plant trees. Well, it's not just feel good, it actually reduces ambient temperatures by about 10 degrees. Very important when 157 days of the year are going to feel like they're over 105, right? So when you talk about those temperatures, talk about planting trees. Likewise, trees, of course, take carbon dioxide out of the air. They improve the water quality by reducing evaporation. They even improve property values and mental health. So if you're talking to somebody who isn't on the fence about this, but you know that they just bought a home and they really want to improve it, one entree may be, if you plant some new trees, it'll improve your landscape and your property values and keep your home cooler. Wasting less food, easy pitch, and getting people to eat more vegetables. People don't understand necessarily the equation on the food systems, so it's good that you should know it. About a third of the food produced in the United States never makes it from the farm to your fork. There's a lot of waste. Americans waste about 22 million tons of food a year. Some of it is because the expiration date says X and you assume you just toss it out. Do you really? Have you actually opened it up and maybe it's still okay in your refrigerator? Reducing food is also a part of habits. It saves you money. It reduces the methane emission because decomposing organics produce a lot of methane in an anaerobic condition, and it conserves energy. So wasting less food is a cultural thing. We associate food abundance with affluence and with having a good party. You should never run out of food, right? But those are the kind of norms we have to start working on collectively. We should focus on quality food, not just abundance for the sake of display. And if we're going to have extra, we need to create those systems to move that food to a productive end, not just tossing it. The food equation is also a lot centered on the beef issue. And for a lot of people, this is second nature, but you'll be surprised when you're an ambassador and people will say, so what is it about this beef issue? Why can't I eat beef? And you should know that in your back pocket. Cattle are the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions within the agricultural sector worldwide. Each cow, and this is true, produces about 220 pounds of methane from farting and belching. So when people say, well, isn't it cows farting and belching? Yeah, it sort of is, but that's not the big piece of it. The big piece is how resource intensive beef is. So to raise beef, you need about 1,800 gallons of water just to produce 1 pound of chuck. Compare that to only 200 gallons of water for soybean. And when you need those kind of resources for cows, you also deforest a lot of natural areas for grazing. So one of the metrics that is used that's very compelling is that the feed conversion rate, sounds fancy, but isn't, the amount of food needed to raise the cow for that 1 pound of beef, it's 25 pounds of food for a pound of beef. Compare that to 4.5 pounds of food for a pound of chicken. So beef is very resource intensive. When people say, well, what is it about the beef? You should just kind of know that and be able to explain it to them, because there are simple changes. We're not saying give up beef, maybe just reduce the amount. So the power of the pocketbook is another way of approaching this issue. Every time you shop, you make a decision on the kinds of things that you purchase. So it's better to purchase the alternative to plastics in bags and paper towel. How about a rag? Or if you're buying a cooler to take to the beach, yes, you can spend the extra $2 on the compostable one instead of the styrofoam one. Another thing is gifting. You know, people feel this compulsion to buy things that are wrapped under a Christmas tree or for a birthday, but we may not need that extra nonsense gift. How about an experience? How about tickets to the Conservancy to see birds? How about a picnic on the beach? I think through COVID, we're learning the value of these experiences. And when we are able to go to theaters and live performances, those artists are really going to need our support. So changing the social norm from something that's in a box with a bow to something that's an experience is also a great way to reduce your carbon footprint. We've talked a lot about buying local and how that helps the local businessmen and their economies, patronizing these sustainable businesses and telling your friends, hey, there's this organic food store I discovered. They source right here from Collier County. That will send the next person there and help that local business person. Even investing in green funds, that used to be something considered sort of, well, you know, I really want to make money. That's my retirement. Well, you can make money and be green in your retirement. In fact, socially responsible investing has taken off and it outperforms some of the traditional funds. Finally, we have to teach people that every decision counts. Solar energy is a real piece of our solution. We can promote solar and we should talk about it. The price of solar has dropped dramatically in the past decade, about 65%. So the return on investment now is about 6 to 7 years. It's very feasible to do solar if you're a homeowner. But what people don't realize is that that's not enough. And here is where changing from your personal action to systemic action becomes really important. Talking to people and getting more people to do solar is great, but about 42% of the nation's rooftops are on buildings for low-income people or nonprofits. And those nonprofits can't benefit from the tax abatements that actually make solar have a 6 to 7 year return on investment. So we are foregoing a huge opportunity to put rooftop solar because the way we incentivize it in our policy doesn't apply to nonprofits like churches or schools or to low-income housing because they don't pay enough income tax to benefit from those tax abatements. So moving from personal action to advocacy takes people realizing this through data and science, and then queuing up the discussion that to really move solar, we have to change policy at the regulatory level, at the government level. So there are different levels of agency. And the first things we talked about were those personal actions, and then we take them from there to policy. Likewise, we can drive an electric car, but we have to tell our government officials that it's not enough for me and you to do it. To make more people be able to participate, we have to improve public transit. We have to put those EV charging stations in town so that electric vehicle chargers are available for everyone. We have to invest in our freight and shipping infrastructure. We have to build more complete streets so those bicycles can drive safer. We have to accommodate new technologies like the scooters and the bike share. We can't brush off the systemic change that makes doing the right thing possible. Same thing with things that government has to do to adapt. We need to change our zoning codes and elevate our buildings maybe beyond the FEMA requirements. We have to invest in bonds that will allow us to put in the pumping systems to keep us dry, and change the regulations around mangroves so that we protect them and not allow them to migrate landward as sea levels rise. That's a tough sell. Some homeowner owns the property behind those mangroves, and it's going to be hard to convince them, yeah, give up a little bit of your quarter-acre lot so that these mangroves can move as the sea levels rise. But it takes policy and government action. And what we need to do is get people behind those ideas. We need to get people behind allowing nature to defend us, preserving the mangroves, investing in those dunes, creating the living shoreline. A project more like this one is more expensive, but ecologically way superior than building a seawall. But you have an argument. Seawalls are easier. People are accustomed to seeing them. Convincing people to do this project takes a lot of convincing. And so as ambassadors, understanding that and being able to convince your neighbors that this is the way we move from personal change to systemic change is really important. So with this, Jennifer, maybe you want to talk about the resource checklist?
Absolutely. If you can stop sharing, I'll start sharing on mine.
Okay.
Okay. Appreciate everybody understanding as we technologically change from one speaker to the next. And I'm going to get it to show better. There we go. So this is a page from the Path to Positive Communities website. And we have resources there that just give a broad idea of the kind of things that you can advocate for your local community to do. Some of these are what local government can do. Some might require state approval or regulation. Some your business can do. And so as you see, there's a whole list. Each of these is a link to a list around waste reduction, water conservation, land use. That would be a local and state government responsibility, as is transportation that Anna talked about. There are even issues around health and equity and resilience. And all this is just to give folks an idea of what's possible, of what communities around the country are doing and working on. And those are things that you can advocate for. We're going to talk about that advocacy in a minute. So we're going to get now to our communication guidelines. I'm going to go through general communication, then we're going to focus on social media communication, which is the fun part of this presentation. And we've got some of you who are experts, which is great because you can, in our discussion at the end, you can add some of your own thoughts about this as well. But I want you to know that we have actually done research on the most effective communication around climate change. And the reason it's important is because you are an influencer. Whether or not you know it, you also connect with influencers, and those of you on social media know about that. Your visible advocacy matters. What you do matters. So you've got to walk the talk. You know, if you're going to talk about composting, you should do it yourself. If you're going to talk about getting an electric vehicle, you should think about getting one yourself. People see you as a role model. They need those role models. And when you talk about climate change, it gives others permission to do so as well. A lot of people don't think other folks are concerned about climate change, but when you say, you know, I've done these changes because I really care and I know that it makes a difference, they're going to feel free to talk about it as well. Every level of engagement is helpful. Every election can make a difference. And absolutely what you do makes a big difference. And Anna has put together this great graphic of how one person can make a change. Anna, if you want to talk through, I'll click as you talk through.
Okay, so I've often been asked, and you know, so why is it important what I do? And you know, can personal action make any difference? Or do we really have to work at the systemic level, at the policy level? And which is more effective if I can only do one thing? And I say both, and I'll explain why. Because you can start by walking the walk and doing some of these actions. You don't have to do everything, and there's no shaming. You can pick the things that fit in your lifestyle, and together you can bring your personal CO2 output or greenhouse gas emissions output down, let's say 15%, and that's great. But what really starts to change is when you communicate your action through your personal stories to a group of friends and family members. Now you have 4 or 5 people that have connected with you through your engagement. Let's say I tried Meatless Monday and you tell them about it. Now those people will tell other people and maybe they'll be influenced. And the first thing we start to see is that groups of people start to change consumer demand. And when you have enough of them and they create a demand for local stores and local produce, and then bigger businesses read that signal of the changing consumer preferences. Think of Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat. Okay, people liked hamburgers. People wanted to eat hamburgers, but they didn't want beef. Beyond Burger was created. It eventually was picked up by McDonald's. Now everybody talks about Beyond Burger. It's now available. Now there are competitors, right? So now you start to change consumer demand. But another thing happens. Go ahead, Jen. One of those people that you talk to, they go to their employer and they're the VP of human resources or operations, and they see that their, break room doesn't recycle properly, or that some people are driving electric vehicles to work and then they have to make a stop or they can't get home. And they tell their company, hey, we can do one little thing. We can put EV charging stations in, and then, or we can offer a vegetarian alternative in the cafeteria. And then those businesses start to demand products. And then the consumer industry sees, hey, it's not just small consumers. There's a bigger market. There is institutional market consumers. Go ahead. Another one of the people that you might run into, well, they live next door to the city council person, and they're sitting on the front lawn talking about how they've decided to test out an electric vehicle, but they're thinking that they can't park it because if they go downtown, they won't have enough charge. There should be chargers in our public garages. And so that person, the city council person who lives next door, they may not have thought of this as a policy initiative, but now they think, hey, all these electric vehicle chargers, They might vote for me. I'm going to propose this at a city council meeting. And now they start to introduce change. Go ahead, Jen. And other people in that group then join an NGO. Like they get inspired by a conversation like we're having today. They join Growing Climate Solutions or Eco America or Audubon or Climate Lobby, and they become a voice that also puts pressure on government. Go ahead. And even some people who don't want to work in an NGO, they go to church on Sunday, and then they find out that there are other people who care about birds and God's creation. And they start a group in their church, and now 10 other people at that church are sort of inclined to learn about this. Comes an election, and that group votes as a block. And lo and behold, they pass the policy proposal that council person put forward. And so what I'm saying in this is that, yes, you should adopt the walk and walk the walk. But as important as it is to do it, is to talk to other people and inspire others to do it. Because it's the communication that appears throughout this slide that really starts to make the wheels move forward.
So that's a great graphic, and we are going to tell you about the most effective way to communicate, the most effective way to engage your neighbors and your policymakers. Social media is a really powerful way to do that. It gets more powerful all the time. There's a tweet from Greta Thunberg. And our research tested guidance is going to help you strengthen your message and get some great things to happen through effective communication. We know from our research that the way we communicate about climate is changing, and it's changing to be more effective. Before 2008, you saw a lot of pictures of polar bears and polar ice caps melting, and you still see some of those, global warming and the polar bears, et cetera. But what we've found is that this motivates about 10% of the population to action. Those are really the activists, the people who've been Sierra Club members for 30 years. It doesn't really connect with the average person because I don't know any polar bears. They're not in my neighborhood. And so it doesn't seem so real. Around 2008, we started talking about climate as a way to create green jobs, to build out transit, to do some of these things around solar, et cetera. But again, unless you had a solar installation in your neighborhood, it didn't really seem to hit you personally. Now we know that the way you connect with people is by making your conversation about personal, relevant issues that people see every day. Things you can see with your own eyes, and solutions that work, that not just solve for climate change, but also help the economy, help your health, and help your security, the security of your property value, the security of your family from extreme weather. There's also, we know that empowerment is important, that when you give people positive solutions that they can do, that are reachable, they will actually do them. The other thing we build on is a moral imperative. So whether or not you are a person of faith or you have an established faith tradition, most people respond to a moral imperative to make the world better for their children, for their neighbors' children, for their grandchildren, for their community. Those are values we know that resonate. So I'm going to go through these steps quickly so we can get to social media and apply these to social media. The first thing you want to do is build rapport. If you don't connect with your audience, they are not going to listen to you. And so we always say, start with people, stay with people. Show the audience that you care about them, which means you're not going to blame or shame, but you're going to show them that you have shared values. You're going to look at their perspective. So if you're talking to a group of parents, you would say, don't you want your children to have a healthier future? Well, we know that pollution and algal blooms and all these things are not good for our health. So let's figure out a way to make the future healthier. Cite tangible health concerns, talk about heat stroke, children not being able to play outside on high ozone days if they have asthma, things that are going to connect with them, and continue to thread those into your message. We know that there are common values, whether you're conservative, whether you're progressive, whether you're young or old. There are a lot of things that we do share. We know that people care about their families, they care about their own health, they care about their security. There's also a sense of personal right and responsibility. We have a right to clean air and water. We know that in survey data, Americans agree that they should have clean air and clean water. They also agree that it should be the government that helps them get to clean air and water, that is there to protect that for them. There's also this sense of American innovation, a can-do attitude, a self-reliance, the ability of us to take care of ourselves and to help our communities and to bring ourselves forward because we're innovative, we're America, we can be self-reliant. We know that those values resonate across all the different boundary lines. And here's a step that many people don't think about. When you're talking to an audience that may have skeptics or deniers, because we know they are out there and we know that there's a lot of misinformation that has bolstered their ability to be skeptical, what you want to do is acknowledge that. Say, I understand that there are disagreements about what's causing climate change, or maybe not everybody has the same sense of urgency that I do speaking to you. I understand that. However, I'm going to tell you some things that benefit you no matter what, that you're going to be able to enjoy because they bring benefits to you. So acknowledge that, because in that way, you're not blaming or shaming, you're continuing to bring them along to listen to you. You don't have to tell them that they're right. All you got to do is say they have a right to have a different perspective. But even with that different perspective, you're going to be so convincing that they're going to want to take the actions and do what you say, because there's so many other benefits. And when we talk about ways to bring it home, you do want to use some relevant examples. You want to talk about the challenges to the economy and to the health that you've seen happen with different climate impacts, but then you pivot quickly to your solutions. And when you emphasize solutions, you're going to inspire and empower people to take action. So you want to point to solutions that protect your family's health. You want to point to the fact that if we continue to go at the pace we're going, and we have more than half of our days over 105 degrees, how are kids going to play outside? How are we going to have baseball and football games, and outdoor fields? So if we have these solutions where we know we can halt pollution, we can actually slow and stop global warming, that's going to protect your lifestyle, your family's lifestyle, and their ability to live full, complete lives. You want to also talk about scale and the efficiency of it. So that's where the advocacy, we want more solar, we want institutional solar, because that brings down emissions faster. You also don't want to ask for too much sacrifice, like stop eating meat entirely. A lot of people are going to push back right away. But as Anna said, maybe reduce it, maybe have meatless Fridays, or maybe have half the beef and turn to a different kind of meat that uses less of our natural resources. So one big thing I've heard recently, I think even one of our major detergent producers has said, wash your clothes in cold water. Guess what? They get just as clean. And now the detergent companies trying to look green are starting to sell their detergent as saying we work just great in cold water. So that's not really a big sacrifice. Then you want to focus on all the different solutions that are possible, things that people haven't thought about, like the fact that when you use less water, you actually save electricity because water is pumped and that takes electricity. So, some of these things people just haven't connected, and telling them they can make a difference, like that slide that showed how one person talking about it can lead to a whole range of impacts. You can make a difference. You personally can lead, and you collectively can lead. You can inspire others to lead as well. Then talk about benefits, health, saving money, inspiring your community, being engaged in the way your community grows. All of those things are benefits for you. And after you have built that rapport and you've gotten people engaged, then you want to end with your ask. And our ask today of you is going to be that you sign up to be a climate ambassador, because then we can stay in touch with you. You can get our monthly emails that have updates on resources and actions you can take, and you'll have access to resources in our shared drive, which includes this entire slideshow. So that's going to be our ask at the end. But always when you're talking to policymakers or to your neighbors, end with an ask, end with 1 or 2 ideas. Can you please write your legislator and ask them to put a resiliency officer in the governor's office? That's an ask. Can you please write to or work with your business to start recycling or start composting? You know, end with some kind of an ask. That sequence is really important. If you don't, we're going to pass on this break because we're going to try to finish to give some time for questions and answers. So if you don't follow the sequence that we told you, if you don't build that rapport from the beginning, you're not going to get the audience to stay with you. Okay, so now we're going to turn to what we have focused on in this time of COVID, especially because we can't be in person. We can't go give that talk to 50 people indoors. We've talked a lot about social media. And a couple of you are social media experts. That's terrific. I want to just remind folks of how the power of social media is that everyone can be a publisher. Everyone can be a blog. In fact, one of our climate ambassadors from our first training has a blog all about pollution. And I think it's called Pollute No More. And every month he has a different article about plastic, about recycling, about compost, all the different things that you can do personally to lower pollution. And social media amplifies your voice. It also helps you connect with other supporters. You know, you've seen this. If you put yourself on Facebook and you've got your high school or your college, pretty soon people who went to your high school can find you because they connect. There are a lot of things that help you connect. And once you join one of the environmental nonprofits, then you'll find that you have a whole audience of folks that can continue to grow. That strengthens your message. It brings your stories together. It amplifies your voice and makes it much more important for policymakers. It's much better to have 10,000 people sign than to have 10 people sign when you're sending a letter to the legislature. Every year is an election year, and someone's always running for something. And so policymakers should be listening. They often have, and we'll actually show you some, they often have social media pages. There are ways that you can find which ones are more active and are going to respond through social media. And we know about things going viral. So we're not going to talk about TikTok today, but those of you who are young and who know how to make TikTok videos, they can be incredibly wonderful ways to inform people as well, because they combine entertainment and humor with important ideas if they're done in the right way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about ways that social media can really make an impact. We know that social media is shorter. It's shorter communication. We know that people, even if it's a blog, they're probably not going to read more than 5 paragraphs. If it displays as 1 page on your computer, that's probably as much as people are going to read, just because we're all busy and we've got so many different ways to communicate. So that first sentence is really important. That first sentence, if you're telling your story, is a great way to get people engaged. So I don't know if anyone knows what TLDR means, but people say too long, don't read. People will actually say that if, and I've even seen blogs say, this is a 2-minute read, right? So give people that sense. It's going to be short. You're going to get your point made quickly. And, you know, all the different steps we told you, you may not be able to do every single one of those, but if you can build that rapport, get your content in with your ask, those are the 3 most important things to do. Visual impact is important. In social media, much more so than in written communication, like sending a letter or an email. That visual communication can grab people. If it's a video, even if it's a short one, it can really grab people's attention. It gets on more search engines. And so we're going to talk a little bit about imagery and photos that are important. Also, social media is more public than a meeting of 50 people, especially if you, when you set up your accounts, if you put that they are public and that anyone can access them. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. When they are public, they can be shared worldwide. And again, that impact, if they are powerful, the impact can be incredible. Now, remember also, if you're public, that trolls and the automated bots can find you. And so you've got to learn to recognize when are these not real accounts and when you don't respond. You can also repeat on social media with different photos and different examples, but you can continue to get your message out by reposting, making the same point, but doing it in different ways. And so I just love this from Ellen. It's an example of the different audiences that different forms of social media have. And so we know that LinkedIn, there's Ellen in her suit. LinkedIn is the professional form of social media. You're going to want to put your education, your current job, your past jobs that you've had, and you're going to want to have a respectable profile there, because there are a lot of professional conferences that you're going to get information on. There are businesses you're going to be seeing on that, but it's a great way to interact. You can put conferences that you're speaking at on there, etc. Facebook is mostly for friends and family, but there are also a lot of organizations that use it because it's free. And again, it can be shared. If you put public, that can be shared publicly so that all your friends see it, but also anybody searching for hashtags that you might use can find your posts. And so it's a little bit more family friendly, but it can also be very powerful for getting sharing articles and sharing information and asks for action. Twitter, of course, is limited in the characters. And so it's much more a short news feed, headlines, join me at this conference, check out this, very short, almost like a news feed. Instagram is harder to share, but you may want to follow certain people. And again, a lot of times Instagram is used to say, look at me, look what I'm doing. So you can use that if you have a lot of followers on Instagram, and you can say, look at me, I'm planting a tree. Great thing to do. Again, Ellen is here showing off that she's hanging out with Michelle Obama. We're not going to talk about Tinder. That's just for dating. Unless you want to date somebody else who's an environmentalist, you can do that. So I talked a little bit about privacy settings, and those of you who are experts on social media know that you can go on Facebook, and I've just circled what looks like when you come up to, when you're setting your privacy, you can say either everyone can see me and see my posts, only friends of friends can see my post, even more restrictive, only my friends, only people I have accepted as friends for my Facebook page can see what I post. That is a much more restrictive set. And you may want to keep that for some of your posts, that maybe about your personal family, something going on, an illness or something. But then if you have a broader post about climate action solutions, you can make that one public. And you can also add, you can connect to the pages of friends, you can connect to the pages of organizations, you can follow people. I like to follow some of the climate scientists, and we'll talk about, I've got a list in one of the next slides about people I like to follow. But you'll find them. YouTube is another place that you can find if you search climate scientists. There are all kinds of ways to search. And these are just what popped up in searching Facebook pages. And I just put in climate Florida and look at all the things that came up. Lots of stuff on Earth Day. Of course, you can see this is from Earth Day 2020. So I did this a few months ago, but you can find lots of different groups that you can join. Some of them will have you request permission to join them, because they don't just let everybody in, because you might be an automated bot. But then if you just ask for permission, a lot of times you'll be allowed to join, and then you can post directly on that organization's Facebook page. So for instance, for today, I went to the Florida Climate Alliance and several others, and I actually posted information about today's webinar because they were open to public. You can search Google, you can search Facebook, you can search the policymakers, and don't forget to invite your friends and family to follow some of the organizations that you follow. You can also do that. Once you become part of a group, you can invite friends and family to join you as well. So for some people, this may be really basic, but for other folks who haven't spent a lot of time on Facebook, I just wanted to go through how you search. So when you pull up Facebook, in the left-hand corner, there's a little magnifying glass for search. And I just put in there Florida Congressman Brian Mast, and look what came up. So I found a bunch of different things. I found his page. When you see this little blue check mark, that means that Twitter or Facebook have verified this is the actual official person. And when you see celebrities, when you see elected officials, you want to look for that blue check mark, because if they don't have that, they could be either a fan of that person or a detractor who's doing a fake Facebook page. So you want to make sure it's been verified by Facebook or Twitter and has the blue check mark. And so once you do that, then you can go to their Facebook page and you'll find out the kind of things they care about when you look at their recent posts. So it looks like Brian Mast cares about Everglades restoration. He posted something about what they're doing to create jobs. And you can also see here, you can sign up. If you sign up, then you'll get notifications from that elected official. You can like them, you can follow them. Some congressional folks and representatives even have asked me a question. They might have a blue button on their Facebook page that says, how can I help? And again, you know, these are ways that you can connect with policymakers. So what you want to look for when you're searching pages, you want to look for other climate and environmental organizations. So you know about Growing Climate Solutions. There's also Environment Florida. Environment America has chapters in many of our states, and they are going to be bringing together not just climate solutions, but other environmental issues. And again, they'll be sharing current news and current opportunities for advocacy. Audubon is very active in Florida. If you go to their page, I guess people in Florida really love the birds. There's such an amazing variety. You also want to follow your city or your county. Both cities and counties have responsibility over land use, over regulations, over the way that local businesses operate. You want to look for politicians, you want to look for scientists, business groups. There are small business owners. There's a page on Facebook, Business Owners of Southwest Florida, Local Businesses United, small businesses. Those are all options. Again, some of those businesses are going to be bragging about their sustainable practices, and you want to thank them. You want to follow them and maybe even use them because they are showing they care about the climate and care about the environment, and you want to support them with your pocketbook. Then you can like and share, you can repost, you can retweet good articles. You don't even have to put a comment, you can just retweet. Although, if you're trying to bring the attention of your followers, if you put a comment that makes it more local and personal when you retweet or share that, that also makes a bigger impact on your followers. And when you start liking a series of articles around climate change, the algorithm that Facebook has will start to direct more of those articles your way. And so it builds on itself and will also introduce you to more groups and more opportunities to learn about climate change and articles. And you can also get people to follow you and comment, and again, start to follow them back. So now we're gonna apply the communications in terms of the way we tell our stories to social media. We are going to use social media to strengthen our message. And one of the things we talk about is to describe, don't label. So when you're a sustainability person, you know what mitigation is, you know what adaptation is. Well, the average person doesn't know what mitigation is, and they don't know what climate impacts are. And so if you look at this post from Growing Climate Solutions, they actually talk about what are impacts. Stronger hurricanes, algal blooms, frequent flooding, record-breaking daily temperatures are some of the noticeable effects. So describe what's going on and don't use a scientific label that people may not understand. That's one way to get people to follow your story. Another way is to bring in a fact from a trusted messenger. We know from our research that people trust scientists, believe it or not, even when there's deniers out there, they trust scientists and they trust people in the medical profession, doctors and nurses, because they are scientists and they care about your health. And so if you quote a trusted messenger, someone like Dr. Natasha Jarnett, who is the director of the program in partnership with the National Environmental Health Association, and she is a medical doctor. Her quote, "Climate change and carbon pollution have always had an impact on public health." So if you're doing a post on how climate change impacts your health, you might quote her as that trusted messenger who is talking about those impacts. You could also quote the American Lung Association. You could quote the American Pediatric Association when you're talking about impact on children, because we know that their lungs are smaller, they breathe more, they're actually more impacted by pollution than adults. And so all of these things are ways to get to strengthen your message and to get more people listening and responding. Telling stories. Stories are a great way to make it personal. It's engaging. People remember stories really well. And so, this is a post that just says, "My daddy used to go fishing in this river." That draws people in. We're just talking about family, talking about spending time with the family. And in fact, I noticed that our new secretary of the Environmental Protection Association of the EPA, he had an interview, I can't remember, one of the major news channels, where he talked about his father taking him fishing and how, that really connected him to the environment and to his connection to the environment. So those kind of stories, people and nature, being authentic, speaking from your viewpoint. When I was young, my parents would take me hiking in the mountains of North Carolina. These kind of stories bring people in, and they also show people that you personally, your authentic voice is making this real for them. If you have asthma, talk about how hard it is to breathe when it's a high ozone day, or when that, the news will have that red or orange, it's unsafe day to go outside. Tell people what it's like if you have asthma, because not everybody does, and it makes a big difference. So use those personal photos and tell your story. And when you're doing a picture of nature, put people in it, because that again connects. Just a few more examples. The Institute for Sustainable Communities, ISC, is a group that does work with communities around the world. And again, they've got a picture, great first sentence: "There is no vaccine for climate change." Boom. Everybody gets that, right? That's a really interesting concept. Oh, because we're in the time of a pandemic, we're in the time of COVID, people are thinking about vaccines. But then how do you think about that with climate change? And so they say, but the right investments in preparation, we can inoculate the most vulnerable. And you just want to read that story. And so you have that social media as that, one sentence, and then you link. When you go on that page and you click on that, then you can read the fuller story. But what a great beginning. Another example, again, the picture is engaging. There are people talking. On the bottom right, you see a picture of somebody who is volunteering, delivering food. And again, the picture is engaging, or somebody doing something, and it's obviously COVID and they're helping, and you just want to read that article. These are great ways to catch people's attention. We talked about limiting the amount of time you spend on impacts. And so you don't want to say, all the 20 things that are happening to your health, happening to your community, your property values are plummeting, your children have, you don't want to dwell on doom and gloom, because people will shut down. We know that there is a self-preservation. They just shut down and say, well, I can't do anything. It's somebody else's problem. I'm going to focus on my job. You want to not do doom and gloom. Instead, you want to inspire, you want to talk about benefits, you want to use strong images or videos, positive, powerful images, and emphasize solutions. So One of the people I like to follow is this Canadian who is an environmental scientist. His name is Mike Kudima. You see him on this. And he just finds all kinds of great videos about cool things that are happening with climate solutions around the world. And so one of them in the middle there, a solar panel that unrolls like a carpet. And there's a video of the truck actually rolling out the solar panels, which is really cool. And then there are the hydro solar panels that actually pull water out of the air. And there are people in the US that are using those as well. But again, he's got a little video that explains it. And then he talks about shade for cyclists and pedestrians, great pictures, great inspiration. And you just want to follow him and you want to see what things are possible. And maybe there'll be something in there you could ask for your local community to do. You also want to use personal and engaging photos. And I think this one from the Southwest Florida Community Foundation is just really fun because there's somebody there having coffee saying, come to our coffee conversations. And she looks like someone I'd like to have a conversation with. So remember, you want to bring people in, you want to be engaging, you want to spark people's interest quickly with a photo, with that first sentence. And on the right, if you find his video, maybe you've already seen it, there's a picture of a chameleon under a water, washing his hands. And so it's just really cute. People love animals, obviously, but he talks about protecting nature. He brings that cute photo into protecting nature. And then of course, washing our hands during COVID, but it's a really clever connection. And so those personal engaging photos and videos are perfect. So you want to use powerful, engaging photos. On the left, we have a cute kid. Cute kids are always good. Strong images. Look at that huge wind turbine, with the moon behind it. That is amazingly strong, powerful. That's a solution. We want to limit the use of, we don't want to show sick people. We don't want to show polar bears that aren't in our neighborhoods. Strong, powerful, engaging, connecting images. The other important thing about strengthening your message is you want to stay above the fray. That means we know there are bots out there. We don't want to be pulled down the rabbit hole of talking to an automated response that's going to always have a comeback. You will never win. And so if you look at this example, there is somebody who is responding to somebody saying something bad about Greta Thunberg. Climate alarmists will use anything to support their cause. Eating bats and causing a virus is an environmental cause. Go back to school, Greta. So he's trying to create doubt, and he's casting aspersions against Greta Thunberg. And so this Dr. Dan Katie responds, global warming is happening. It's accelerating. It's caused by humans, and left unchecked, it will cause the ecosystem to collapse. The numerous scientific vectors pointing to this are indisputable. That will be okay. But then he goes on to say, claiming otherwise is ignorant or malicious. So that is going to just incite, another response. And so they, go into stop, puppet, all that. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't respond. If it's something that gets personal and negative, ignore it and just go on to post personal positive messages. So, and believe me, there are bots out there and there are people out there who are searching because they're paid, they're by the oil and gas industry, or maybe by the meat industry, or maybe they're just people who are contrarians who want to argue. Just you gotta avoid the temptation. We also know that there are specific words, and we have this in our online resource, Let's Talk Climate, Let's Talk Climate and Communities. We know that certain words like global warming and climate change even people can stop listening if they are prone to be deniers or skeptics. But if you talk about damage to the climate, you talk about pollution, we know that people understand that and they will continue to read and not stop right away. We also know things like when you call a threat to the environment or to the air, people don't connect with that the same way as they do the air we breathe. When you say we, you're connecting yourself to your audience. So the air that we all breathe is important for our health and our future. People connect to that. So these are just some examples of the actual word choice that makes a difference in your messaging. You want to follow that message discipline. So don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't respond to trolls. Be clear. End with your ask. Even if it's just say, please share, please retweet, please repost this. You know, if it's a great article about solutions or about solar on your home or about how composting helps, retweet this. That's an ask. Or you can say, try this at home. If it's composting or a rain barrel or using less water, contact your legislator, register to vote. So if you see, I just posted something from Mom's Clean Air Force and then from Pachamama Alliance Community. These are both asks. Protect our air from deadly soot. There's actually a sign on that you can do. Send your message. Pachamama says, take action. There's a link. Speak up for the protection of our wetlands. And so these are strong posts. And look at that great photo. Here's somebody, you know, kayaking in some of the beautiful waterways of Florida, a beautiful wetland. So those are strong messages that connect. Then you want to move people to action. And, you know, Sierra Club and Audubon, again, are both very active. Look at those great photos. That one, you know, that shows the nighttime observatory, you know, and there's a story, a hush falls at night as the sky turns dark and stars appear. The telescopes aim for the heavens. You know, all that's really engaging. And then it ends with an ask. Which is not to pave more places in rural Florida, to keep that light pollution low so we can have these amazing views, right? So that's a great picture and a great story. On the right, what a great picture of a rainbow over Lake Okeechobee. And, you know, that's an important watershed. And so there's a link to an article. Again, that picture engages you, and the article moves people to action and gives people a specific ask to make a difference. And so remember that social media amplifies your message. You can share, you can invite friends to like and share, you can tag friends, you can tag policymakers, you can use humor. Remember to avoid blaming or shaming. Always, when you're engaging with officials, remember to give them credit because they depend on that to get reelected, and thank them when they do the right thing. So I just, again, have a sample post. The Community Foundation of Collier County said, thank you to Penny Taylor for spreading the word, you know, about something that we're doing. And she's a local official. That's important to remember to do. Give people credit. Don't just ask, but also say thank you, thank you, thank you. You can also, if you forget something or you accidentally blamed or shamed and you forgot the messaging, you can go back and edit your posts. Some people don't know that, but you can go back and edit. You can even delete posts if they end up attracting too many trolls. That can happen, depending on that word choice and the way the algorithms are set to automatically respond to some things. So remember, you can always edit, and you can even delete if you have to. When somebody follows you, follow them back, or when you follow somebody, see if they'll follow you back to help amplify and increase the way that messages are being shared. Using hashtags is really important as well, because that makes things searchable. So some of the things you can hashtag climate, hashtag climate action, those get lots of posts. Hashtag environment, sustainability, there are a number of words that you can use. And again, that makes it searchable, and it's going to increase the likelihood that people are going to engage and have your message show up on their screen. You also have to be persistent with policymakers. They get thousands of emails, thousands of posts, and you can post the same thing again and again, and eventually it will get through. Somebody in the staff will see it. And always use appropriate language. And we know what that means. I had to tell my adult children to be careful about some words that young people tend to use, because unless you edit it, it stays there. It can be searchable. It can be there forever. People can take screenshots. And so even if you edit something later, it can end up somewhere. So just be very careful with all your language. Think about it as, even if it's just to friends, think about it as being totally public, because you never know in that group of friends if someone's going to think it's funny to take a screenshot of something you posted and share it, and then you can get in trouble if it's not appropriate. So to review, you want to start with people, stay with people. If you're going to do a picture of nature, put a person in it to give it scale, to connect people to our connection to nature. Connect on those shared values that we know Americans have, whether you're conservative or progressive, whether you're young or old. We care about our health, we care about our family, we care about safety and security. We want to protect, we want to have low costs, low taxes. We also want to have future prosperity. We want to maintain our property values. We want to have good quality of life for our children and grandchildren. Make your message personal, make it local, current, and relevant. You can ask a question to engage people. Like, how many people knew that you could draw water out of the air with a solar hydro panel? Don't blame or shame, emphasize solutions. Don't dwell on doom and gloom, stay above the fray. Keep your message and your ask clear and simple. Stick with that and your message discipline. And if you're talking to policymakers, give them options. Please protect our water quality by, and give them 3 or 4 things, and maybe they'll put 2 of those in their next legislation, and thank them afterwards. So here are some people and organizations that you might want to follow. Catherine Hayhoe is a climate scientist. She is an evangelical Christian, and she's a mom. And she builds on all of that in her posts. She has some great YouTube videos about engaging on climate change. She also says the best way to help with climate action is to talk about climate change and climate solutions. So she's really fun to follow. Michael Mann is another one. Bill McKibben, of course, Greta Thunberg. Mike Kudima already talked about. Jane Fonda does a lot on climate change. Jamie Margolin is a young person, very engaged, started Friday Futures, does a lot, again, from a younger perspective. Then, of course, we have organizations like the National Climate Assessment. These are data-driven organizations that will give you facts that you can use. They are nationally recognized and established trusted messengers. Yale Climate Communications, they actually have done survey data on the county level. So you can see what your neighbors think about climate action. The Drawdown Project has a list of 100 things you can do to help the climate. And it's a global perspective. And so one of those things is to educate women and children, because women and children around the globe are not always in the education system in some of the developing countries. The more awareness, the more knowledge people have of what harm we're causing to our environment and to our climate, the more they're going to act. NOAA is the National Organization on Atmosphere and Climate, and they have great statistics. EPA, obviously, Environmental Protection Agency. There are many environmental advocacy organizations. I didn't list them all here, but Sierra Club, EDF, Natural Resource Defense Council, National Wildlife Federation. There are quite a few. Media. Follow the media and submit letters to the editor, submit opinion pieces. There are some that are not necessarily local. Inside Climate News is a global news source, but a lot focused obviously on climate. Vox and Grist are 2 other online sources. Of course, the New York Times is a climate reporter. Climate Nexus is another one that draws different articles on climate from different national sources like the AP and Reuters and Bloomberg. Then you can follow local news as well. Follow businesses, follow policymakers, state, local, federal. And then, of course, don't forget friends and family. So just a quick example of some what Facebook pages look like for your federal officials. You can see sign up, connect, visit. They all have ways that you can engage and ways that you can follow them. Some state officials, again, That's what their Facebook pages look like. You can send them messages so you can actually connect them that way. If you think your emails aren't getting through or your phone calls. And then of course, local officials. I just put a few mayors in here. Again, you can see local officials and federal and state officials want to connect. They want to respond to constituents, contact us, send a message. So these are all ways that you can use social media to connect with policymakers. They also count emails. Just a few quick tips on email. If something is happening in your community and you don't say anything, your elected officials will think that means you're okay with it. So even if you don't think that your email gets through, someone's counting those emails. So if you put your ask in the title line, please vote for a Green New Deal, please vote for water regulations, put that in the title line, somebody on their staff is counting the number of emails for and against. And so if you put it right in the title and the headline, they're going to count that. It's going to be added. And they're going to say, we got 500 emails that said to support fertilizer regulation, and we got 10 emails that said don't. So I think if you want to get reelected, you're probably going to support regulating fertilizer in terms of runoff. Follow the 15 steps, build that rapport first. Tell them you're in their district. If you're writing, emailing, or Facebook messaging an official, say, I'm one of your voters. I'm in your district. And here's what I think. Here's my story. Here's how climate impacts are affecting me and my family. And then end with your ask. Be grateful, engage with gratitude, be supportive. Again, just a few examples of businesses. Here's one in Southwest Florida called Brightview that's emphasizing its organic nature and how climate friendly it is. Great. If you're going to use their services, tell them thank you for doing that. Again, Climate Change Florida, look at all the organizations I pulled up, all kinds of opportunities there. You can like them, you can follow them, you can post on their pages. Here's just one of them, the Florida Climate Pledge. You do want to look at how many folks are following, and if you can see they have 644 followers, so you can connect with those 644 people by posting on that page. And again, when you look at local officials and see how many folks they're engaging with, that gives you a sense of whether you'll get a response or not. If you go to an official's page and they haven't posted since 2019, they're probably not monitoring that page every day. Here's another one. That was Florida Climate Week last year, also presented by the Volo Foundation. We appreciate them. Florida Climate Alliance, one more. And then of course the page for Growing Climate Solutions. And there are, you can check out their posts, you can check out, you can send them a message, and they're also on Twitter. So put in that plug for Growing Climate Solutions. If you have a minute, if you have your phone or you have another device that you can find Growing Climate Solutions, like and follow the page, invite a friend. If you have a chance, we can do that right now while we look at this cute cartoon. That's Greta Thunberg. All right, I'm sure everybody's done that. I'm sure you found Growing Climate Solutions. And you can also sign up for their newsletter. I don't know, Anna, if you want to say anything about the newsletter. All right.
1 second, I had my mute.
Okay.
So we do produce a newsletter every other month. Our readership is growing. Not only do we like to put out material, we also solicit from people, interesting material. If you want to write a blog and you've written something you're kind of proud of and you don't have too much pride of authorship, send it to me. If we can, we'll fit it in if it fits in with the theme. And we have about 500 people now on our newsletter list. So it's a great way to test the waters. And don't be shy, even if you're not the best writer, we can, fix it up a little if you don't have too much pride of authorship, and we will definitely give you the byline. So, join us and you'll read things that are not highly scientific. We don't want to bore people. We want to keep it light and engaging, but help spread good ideas around and show to our growing partners, what a diverse group of people support this. And that's part of it. Getting all those voices in to the discussion is really important. So bring your perspective.
Thanks, Anna. And I just have a few cute examples of how much social media can amplify your message. So when COVID hit, the National Cowboy Museum had to close, and they got this really wonderful picture. Look how engaging he is, of Tim, the head of security for the cowboy. And it was really cute. Look how many followers he has on Instagram, 15,000 likes. And it was just very personable, very cute. And he didn't really understand. So he acted like he really didn't understand social media at all. And he said, I'm excited to share what is called content and what are called platforms, including the Twitter, the Facebook, and the Instagram. So he did this cute little thing and he got tons of followers. And then at the end, he goes, send, like he thought he had to type it out. Of course, he didn't really, but his media team or whoever works with him realized that it would just be a great sensation. So they got tons of followers that way. Here's an example how Instagram turned a tweet into a feature. Somebody said, instead of ask me a question, say, why don't you say, how can I help? And the next day, that website changed the way they engage with their customers to make it more inclusive and engaging. So just by offering that, somebody was watching it, someone from the company, and they followed it and they did it. So you never know what kind of impact you're going to have. This is also a great story. We have our own Greta Thunberg in Charlotte. I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her name is Mary Ellis Stevens. And she has been doing the Friday climate strike. She started it when Greta started it. She was the only person to sit out in front of our local government building every Friday, missing school, to do her climate strike. Well, she posted a picture. She started following Greta. Greta followed her back. And she realized that Greta was in New York. And so she direct messaged her. She did a public post, which said, we'd love to have you in Charlotte on your way to Chile, because she read what her journey was going to look like. And then she direct messaged her. Greta Thunberg came to Charlotte because of Mary Ellis Stevens' tweet. And she addressed a crowd of 5,000 people here. And again, that's the power of connecting through social media. And so there's the I got Mary Ellis to send me a screenshot of her direct message, and it said, thank you so much for everything you're doing. I'm wondering if you're striking this Friday. And that's when Greta came to join us here in Charlotte. Pretty amazing. And also, you can use your phone to take pictures, while you're at an event doing something to help spread the message. You can use emojis. Those are some examples on the right. There are green environmental emojis too. So there's a green heart, there's a globe, there's a broccoli, there are little leaves. So, find those emojis and use those. And, have good posts. You don't have to have too many, but have good ones, and everything is public. And so just, be ready to go public with it and share and make an impact. You can also measure your impact. There's a way, for those of you who are social media experts, about this, but Google Analytics, Twitter Analytics will show you how many folks are sharing your tweet. And so if you can see this media tweet from Growing Climate Solutions, got 12.5 thousand impressions. That means that many people had it go across their screen. They may not have liked it, they may not have read it, they may not have shared it, but an impression is it ended up on their screen. And so you got to figure a huge part of those people actually read it, at least read the first line and engaged. So that's one way you can see, and you can actually test, what headlines are going to engage more people. And so you can get better and better at it. So we're going to open to questions and discussion in a minute, but I want to tell folks first about what our ask is to you as a climate ambassador. So the first thing you're going to do is sign the agreement. That just helps us know that you allow us to email you, to include you in resources and updates, and it gives you access to our shared drive. What you do in return is you promise, we're not going to, fine you if you don't, but you're going to speak to at least 2 groups in the next year. Can be on video, can be a Zoom group, or it can be a book club, or you're going to speak to 2 groups the next year about climate solutions, and you're going to make 3 or 4 posts. It's a pretty easy bar, but what we want to do is stay connected. So set up all your social media accounts and start following and liking the elected officials as well. Make a plan to do a post a week. I'm sure some of you are doing more. And start telling your story. And then we just ask, if you can, to tell us at the end of each month, did you get a letter to the editor printed? Did you speak to a Girl Scout troop, or did you speak to a Rotary Club? Let us know what you're doing, because that helps us measure the impact that we're having in our trainings. We have resources that we're going to send you, and we'll tell you more about this in our orientation call, which is going to be on May the 13th. We'll continue to send you tips and resources and guides that are available to you as an ambassador, because we want to help you have effective messaging. We want to help spread the word. We want more people in Florida engaging and advocating for climate solutions. So you've got your list of things to do, how you're going to report, how you're going to connect, how you're going to be engaged, all the different ways we showed you on social media, through email, through working with this group, and with your current jobs. And so I am going to turn off the screen share. I want you to enjoy this cartoon for a minute because it's so true. It's like, look at all the great things that come out of taking climate action. Why would we not want to do this, even if we disagree with what's causing climate change? Why would we not want a healthier future? So with that, I am going to take off screen share, and we're going to open up. We've been talking at you for a long time. We are going to finish a little before 1, so you'll have some time back in your day, but we do want to have some time for discussion and questions. So if everybody wants to turn their video on and unmute, we can open up to discussion. And you'll see in the chat, we do have a link to the form that you sign up to be an ambassador. And then you can get all of our resources and the whole slideshow again. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. Looks like we may have lost a few people. But again, this is being recorded. So folks who signed on at the beginning will get the full recording. Any comments or questions from anybody? Just unmute and speak away.
Nothing?
We were clear, totally clear, everything understood. For those of you who are social media experts, any comments? I think we might have lost our social media expert.
No, Antonio's still on, I think.
All right, Antonio.
Hi, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay. So, just to be clear, we think that it's really important to emphasize to everybody out there, because you have your own media account, whether you choose to be an ambassador, which we would love to have you join us, and then you have all the resources that we have and we ask you to retweet, or even if you don't, you post a lot of stuff, pictures of yourself eating food, pictures of your family, cute baby pictures, happy birthdays. Each one of them is an opportunity to make an interesting impression. And let your family, friends, and circle know that this is an issue that means something to you. And repost interesting articles. You will reach other people. They will start seeing you as a role model. And that's how you make a really big impression, and you bring others along in the drag. So we threw a lot out at you, but the message is pretty simple. You're on social media every day. You use it for all kinds of stuff. The more you reference climate, the more people you're going to touch and intrigue to also get into climate. And it's so easy because you have that phone with you all the time. I am a walking camera picture taker. If I see water flooding a road, I snap a picture of it. Of course, I use it in my presentations, but you see it all around you the more you look. You see a road flooded, take a picture. Say, oh my God, this road is flooded with just that 15-minute rain. Think about what it might look like in the future. Done. You've just probably scored you followed all the things. You made it local, you made it personal. People recognize that street. Now you have a whole bunch of people thinking about it. It's that simple.
And I've noticed that Instagram is one of those places that a lot of people post pictures of food. It's just one of those things. And so when you're having your meatless Monday or whatever, take a picture of your meal. And there are always opportunities. Or take a picture of your backyard garden.
Hi, Marco Spade here. Just wanted to say thank you guys. It was really informative. I learned a lot. Well, I'm 60, so I'm not actually that young to understand the social media that good. But I did find myself engaging in a lot of negatives. And at some time, I think maybe 6 months ago, we figured out a lot of them are bots that you just get inundated. It's really hard. And well, I think the biggest takeaway I have today is moving forward is to stay on the positive note, not to get, like you said, drug into the rabbit hole. I tend to get easily drug in there. Somehow or another, the conversation starts off semi-positive and then it goes really negative quick. And then once it goes negative, there just doesn't seem to be a way to turn it around to a positive. So I'm going to work on that and see if we can't keep everything more positive moving forward. That's a great takeaway for today. I'd like to thank you guys. It was awesome.
Yes. Thank you, Marcos. It is amazing how those bots just respond, and they're programmed really in a very clever way. So don't go down the rabbit hole. Antonio, you wanted to say something.
Yes, I can speak in Spanish, so you can translate my message.
Okay.
Okay. Me ha encantado todo el programa hasta ahora. Me parece que las redes sociales también tienen un impacto muy positivo en todo esto, pero lamentablemente en este país el cambio climático y todo lo que es el tema del clima aquí es un tema político. Cuando yo decido enviar un mensaje a mi comunidad o a mis seguidores, Instagram me baja el algoritmo y me sabotea el algoritmo. Eso es algo lamentable, pero sin embargo, mi comunidad o lo que yo deseo transmitir lo hago de la manera más positiva, porque el cambio climático se ha visto aquí de una manera muy negativa. Wow. Entonces, cuando vayamos
déjame traducir.
Yep, let Anna.
So Antonio said that he really enjoyed the presentation and appreciated it, but he found that unfortunately in the United States, the topic of climate change is so highly politicized that when he posts about climate change on his social media, his algorithm is actually sabotaged and he gets lower down on the algorithm scale, even though he tries to keep the message positive. Mm-hmm. Okay, seguí.
Y cuando vayamos a enviar un mensaje, enviémoslo desde como lo dijeron ustedes, de una manera positiva, un cambio positivo, porque yo creo que este es el lema y el lema que me ha puesto Bolo Foundation, que busquemos buscar que las soluciones sean positivas, que no suenen negativas, que veamos y que le digamos a la gente lo que realmente hay que hacer y lo positivo que va a ser los resultados, para que el resultado sea más grande. Eso es lo que...
Okay, déjame traducir, si no me acuerdo. So he said, one of the things that he has found to be true, and that the Volo Foundation also requests that he do, is that when he does his social media outreach, he really focuses on the positive solutions and what those positive solutions outcomes are going to be. And he keeps away from any of those negative messages because that keeps him in a safer zone in terms of outreach. Seguí, discúlpame.
Y pues yo involucro mucho a las personas a los eventos. He podido crear Clean Beach, Beach Cleanup, y de una u otra forma cuando yo los invito o yo lo hago y yo muestro lo que hice y yo muestro las imágenes de lo que había en el mar, de la suciedad que había en el mar, las personas quedan, wow. Yo por lo menos al principio de todo esto no tenía ninguna participación en estos eventos, pero cuando yo involucro a alguien, esa persona se transforma y yo me transformé. Entonces eso es lo que yo muestro, que esa transformación puede ser positiva y que la persona nunca vuelve a ser la misma luego del evento o luego de lo que yo lo haya involucrado en alguna actividad.
So he also says that one of his major roles is to invite people to events, to beach cleanups or other types of events, and take pictures of the before and after, and take pictures of what they've taken out of the ocean. And he finds that when people participate in an event, the act of the participation actually changes them probably forever, that they are not the same person after they've actually done the action than before. So even though you can post, getting people to do things is really the most powerful outcome.
Y pues, muestro también cómo yo reduzco el uso del plástico, todas esas cosas. Por lo menos hoy aprendí mucho sobre el agua, sobre cómo ahorrar agua, y eso es algo muy importante. Entonces, ya más o menos de aquí, de hoy me llevo muchas cosas que voy a seguir mostrando, cómo yo los pongo en práctica para que las personas también lo pongan en práctica. Y bueno, muchas gracias, me encantó absolutamente todo.
Ok, gracias, Antonio. Por favor, enviarme un email o sign up, registrarte con Growing Climate Solutions, así nos podemos comunicar. So he said at the end that one of the things that he learned out of this training was, for example, saving water, and that there are different ways in which to save water. And what he can do now is take pictures of himself actually doing those actions as an influencer, saving water by changing something or saving water. And that is very powerful when he can post a picture of the ways he's doing it to influence others. So he really enjoyed it. And that's one of the messages that he can take with him, is that he can change the kind of postings that he'll do with new information about ways to influence climate.
Sounds like the focus on water may be something to connect with Marcos about also. And Marcos, me imagino que usted habla español también. Oh, he's trying to unmute. I don't know how to say, ¿cómo se dice unmute in español?
Yeah, my name is Marcos Spania, and my dad was Cuban. Fortunately, he was a jockey, and he got killed at Pimlico Racetrack when I was 5, and we moved out to a farm in West Virginia. So my Spanish isn't that good. Okay. I understand more Spanish than I speak, and the reason I don't speak it is I really sound like a hillbilly when I speak Spanish, and Spanish people actually look at me like that was the wrong word. And I do understand more than I can speak. But no, it definitely the takeaways on the water are excellent. One thing I'd just like to share is that water is a very finite resource. We only have so much to go around. Very, very little of it is drinking water. We have a lot more salt water out there and a lot of polluted water. And one of the reasons that we are doing what we're doing is, we also advocate, like I say, we speak to a lot of government officials. Nancy Pelosi is a friend of one of the people on our board. So we try to advocate as much as we can. But the truth is we all have to conserve water. We have to protect the waterways, and we have to really go out of our way not to waste what little bit of water we have, because, hey, look, there's plenty. I'm 60, like I said, there's plenty of water for me. But kids, grandkids, yeah, not so much so. And if we don't take care of the water now, we're really going to be in bad shape down the road. And as you know, in Florida, we have an aquifer system. We have governments that are pumping their groundwater, their wastewater, basically, not their sewage, but their bad water that, you know, collects on our street with the oil and stuff directly into portions of our aquifer. And they say, hey, no big deal. I think it is kind of a big deal. And if you guys can, like I say, advocate on any kind of level, and just try to get our government officials to understand that we can't poison our aquifer. Well, our aquifer is very important here in Florida, and we really need to protect it. There's companies that are taking, Nestle, other companies that are taking water from some of our spring sources in the aquifer here, and that water is not going to be able to come back. And as things get hotter, we're not sure which way it's going to go. We're going to get more rain, or we're going to get less rain, or we're going to have more access to fresh water, less access. You know, climate change is a very difficult subject. But what we want to make sure is that we protect the water that we have now, and that we treat it as a resource, not as just, I know when I was coming up, we never really thought of water as a resource. We just thought, hey, plenty of water, we can go do whatever we want. I myself, when I was younger, did a lot of boating and fishing, that kind of thing. And as I became a solar wind geothermal engineer and started moving into environmental science, I gave up boating. I gave up fishing. I have an electric boat now. All our boats now are electric and solar powered. Our house is solar powered. Everything we do is, you know, geared towards the environment. But I don't expect everybody's going to do exactly what I do. But if you can just do little things to help with that water, keep your toilet tank running in good condition so it doesn't leak. A lot of people think, well, it doesn't really mean a big deal. You know, at the end of the day, it does. Wash your dishes without keeping that water running and flowing, you know, the whole time. Find a way to, you know, use less water, collect the rainwater for, you know, to water your plants, that kind of thing. Yeah, when it comes to water, I mean, I could probably talk all day, but I'm not, because I know you guys want to get out of here. But yeah, really look at it as a resource, and let's do what we can to protect it.
So Marcos, you need to also take some pictures of your electric boat and your solar panels, and you know, brag about that and show people how easy it is to go all electric, because those are great solutions, and not everybody knows about electric boats. So, you know, they're actually making electric airplanes too.
Yeah, I was just looking at one today. Only got a range, I think, of 255 miles. But for let's say like transport from here to Tampa, here to Orlando, would be a great, or here into the Keys, it would be a great airplane. And those are available today. These aren't things we have to do tomorrow. I go to our local government all the time, and I bring them data and pictures on electric trash trucks. And here, I'm from Hallandale, Florida, and Alyssa's our sustainability director here. It's her project, but we're working on actually getting the largest floating solar panel array in North America to help provide electricity for the city here. We just installed 2 charging stations at City Hall for electric vehicles. Yep. We've committed to and got a grant for electric buses. We have 6 little buses that go around town, and next year those are going to be all electric. So there are things you can do, like say, to help the environment. And today, you know, these trash trucks, I don't know if you ever see them driving through your neighborhood, but oh my God, they blow this black smoke in the air. They smell terrible. They're just an environmental nightmare. But they actually have electric trash trucks and electric motors. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but they can create like 16,500 pounds of thrust, which is like an amazing amount of power compared to like a gasoline motor. And one thing I tell the women all the time is, if you can tell the guys that electric cars are sexy, they'll probably buy them. Yeah, just tell the guys, hey, you know, these old, when they think they got their fast Porsche or whatever, say, yeah, you know, that's not really sexy. Now, if you had an electric Tesla, that would be awesome. And I tell the girls this all the time, because believe it or not, guys will do whatever you guys say. If you guys say that electric is sexy, they're going to go electric. If you keep saying, hey, dig that big gas vroom vroom motor, they're going to keep buying those. So
well, I'll be sure and tell my husband
on big ways and small ways. But
what you do, take pictures of some of those solutions, and if you tag Growing Climate Solutions when you post that, or if you tag Catherine Hayhoe or some other people, you never know who's going to repost that, right? And there are great ways you can share all that. So that sounds wonderful.
These are the reasons I'm attending conferences, and I've been doing so for the past year. I'm a scientist. I understand the science end of this, and the things we're trying to do now is, of course, to get the word out. So that's why I brought other people on the board who, like we have, like I say, we have a rock star who's come on, and we're hopefully when the concerts get back, she can actually tell the audience, you know, hey, let's do cool things for the environment. I don't know if you noticed, I have some art in the background. These are pieces that were donated to our foundation by Renee Menzies, who's a world famous artist. She does these abstracts. These are actually like 3D. They're kind of hard to show on picture, but so we've got a lot of people involved, and the more people we can get involved, you know, of course, the faster the word will spread and the better things will go. But I am just learning how to get this stuff on social media. Like I said, background in science. I do have a background in the entertainment industry, but that's as an audio engineer working for symphonies, rock bands, that kind of thing. But I'm going to learn this social media, and we will get the word out. But I do appreciate the comments, because we are trying to figure out how to do this, and it's a learn as you go kind of procedure.
Super. Well, we're going to wrap up. I know people have other events to get to. We want to leave you some time. So we're going to send you a follow-up email with a link to our orientation, which will be May the 13th, 3:30 to 5. At 4 o'clock, the other Southwest Florida ambassadors will join us for a quarterly call that will be an update on some of the things going on in Florida and the communities. And we will do an overview during the orientation of the shared resources and the shared drive that we have. So that is the end of our presentation today. You've got our emails. We really appreciate your time with us, and we will hope to see you at the orientation, hope to get folks to sign up to be ambassadors and to keep talking about climate. And several of the folks we heard today have some great ideas, and we look forward to hearing more of those from all of you. So thanks so much on behalf of Eco America. Anna?
And Growing Climate Solutions. Please stay in touch and, you know, sign up for the newsletter and look at other events that we do during the year. This isn't just a Climate Week thing. We do it all year round. So hope to hear from you again.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Happy Climate Week. Happy Earth Day on Thursday.